Most people think waiting to buy is the safe decision, but what if the thing that actually puts you further behind isn't buying at the wrong time? It's sitting still for too long while the market keeps moving without you. Because that's what I'm seeing happen right now across North Jersey. I'm Betti Russo, real estate broker associate with Keller Williams Prosperity, and today I want to talk to you about one of the biggest misconceptions buyers have in this market, especially people trying to make smart, careful financial decisions. They think waiting protects them, but in a lot of cases, waiting quietly costs them far more than they realize. And if you're looking in towns like Wayne, Oakland, Wyckoff, or other parts of North Jersey where inventory stays tight and demand stays consistent, this becomes a much bigger issue than most buyers expect. Because here's what happens. People spend months trying to predict the perfect market. They wait for rates to drop. They wait for prices to soften. They wait for headlines to feel less uncomfortable. Meanwhile, the market keeps moving. Life keeps moving, and affordability quietly changes underneath them. Not always because prices explode overnight. Sometimes it's because the exact kind of house they wanted slowly moves out of reach while they're trying to feel more certain. The biggest mistake buyers make isn't always buying at the wrong time. A lot of times it's waiting too long, trying to feel completely comfortable before they make a move. Because the market rarely gives you perfect clarity. There's almost always something people are nervous about. Rates, inventory, competition, prices, the economy. But while buyers are waiting for the market to feel safer, affordability keeps shifting in the background. And that's the part people don't realize until they go back out looking 6 months later and discover the same house now costs more, or they qualify for less. Now, here's where this gets tricky. A lot of buyers think the conversation is only about interest rates. And yes, rates matter. Monthly payment matters. Comfort matters. But real estate decisions are usually bigger than one rate snapshot in one moment. Because when you buy a home, you're not just locking in a payment. You're locking in an asset. And assets behave differently over time than expenses do. This is why I always tell people, you can refinance a rate. You cannot go backward and buy yesterday's home prices. And that's the part that changes the conversation, especially in North Jersey where desirable towns tend to recover value quickly. A lot of buyers also assume waiting guarantees better conditions later. But markets don't improve in one straight line. Sometimes rates improve and competition explodes. Sometimes inventory improves, but prices rise. Sometimes affordability improves in one town while disappearing in another. So the idea that there's going to be this obvious green light moment where everything suddenly feels perfect, honestly, that moment usually never comes. And this is where buyers can accidentally lose years trying to eliminate uncertainty that simply comes with real estate. Here is what actually happens. Most buyers aren't competing against today's market. They're competing against future affordability. And future affordability is incredibly difficult to predict perfectly. That's why trying to time the market becomes so emotionally exhausting. People start believing there's going to be a clear signal telling them, okay, it's safe now, but markets almost never work that way. Waiting for the perfect market is usually a losing strategy because perfect markets don't exist. There's always something buyers are nervous about. When rates were lower, buyers were overwhelmed by bidding wars. Now rates are higher, but competition has eased in many price points. The market always shifts the pressure somewhere. The buyers who usually benefit most long-term are not the people who perfectly timed the market, because we know that is not possible. They're the people who bought when the house made sense for their life and then gave the investment time to work. And honestly, this is where I think buyers need more clarity and less noise, because headlines are designed to create emotional reactions. Your decision should be based on your actual life. Can you comfortably afford that payment? Does the move improve your lifestyle? Does the house fit for the next phase of your life? Would owning stabilize your situation over the next several years? Could you comfortably refinance later if rates improve? Do you realistically plan to stay long enough for ownership to work in your favor? Those are much more important questions than trying to predict exactly what rates will do 3 months from now. And here's another thing I see happen all the time. People think they're preparing to buy because they've been casually watching the market online for a year or two, but watching listings and actually understanding the market dynamics are two completely different things. You don't really build confidence scrolling through homes at night. You build confidence by understanding financing, taxes, inspections, commute patterns, neighborhood differences, inventory behavior, negotiations, what actually creates value long term. That's why some buyers spend years waiting but never actually feel more prepared when it's finally time to move. And this is where home buyers lose momentum without realizing it. Because they're waiting for certainty, life itself keeps evolving. Families grow, commutes become exhausting, kids change schools, people need offices, parents age, rent increases. Spaces start feeling temporary instead of supportive. So this conversation is rarely just financial. It's usually about quality of life. Now, that doesn't mean every person should rush out and buy immediately. That is not what I'm saying. Sometimes waiting absolutely makes sense. Sometimes people need to improve finances, reduce debt, save additional reserves, or stabilize income first. But strategically waiting and fearful waiting are not the same thing. Strategic waiting has a plan behind it. Fearful waiting usually turns into paralysis, and paralysis quietly becomes expensive over time. If you're trying to figure out whether buying now, waiting, or adjusting your strategy actually makes the most sense for your situation, this is exactly the kind of conversation I walk buyers through every day because there's never one answer that fits everybody. I worked with buyers recently who kept delaying their search because they were convinced rates were going to fall dramatically. And honestly, they weren't being irrational. They were trying to make a smart financial decision. But while they waited, inventory tightened in the exact towns they wanted most. By the time they re-entered the market, they were looking at smaller homes, fewer options, and higher overall prices than what had been available months earlier. What changed wasn't just the rate. Their buying power changed. And that's why waiting can become so expensive without people even realizing it while it's happening. At the end of the day, buying a home is not about perfectly timing the market. It's about making a strong decision for your life with good information, realistic expectations, and a long-term perspective. The people who usually feel best about their decision years later are rarely the ones who won the market timing game. They're the ones who stopped waiting for certainty and started building stability, equity, lifestyle improvement, and long-term leverage instead. If you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for the market to feel perfect, let's look at what waiting is actually costing you in today's market before affordability shifts even further.